Scene 15. Make it look effortless. Practice isn't the thing you do once you're good. It's the thing you do that makes you good. Malcolm Gladwell. Steve Jobs is a master showman, working the stage with precision. Every move, demo, image, and slide is in sync. He appears comfortable, confident, and remarkably effortless. At least it looks effortless to the audience. Here's his presentation secret. Jobs rehearses for hours. To be more precise, many hours over many days. Jobs unveils Apple's latest products as if he were a particularly hip and plugged-in friend showing off inventions in your living room. Truth is, the sense of informality comes only after grueling hours of practice. Observing a Business Week reporter, one retail executive recalls going to a Macworld rehearsal at Jobs' behest and then waiting 4 hours before Jobs came off the stage to conduct an interview. Jobs considers his keynotes a competitive weapon. Marissa Mayer, a Google executive who plays a central role in launching the search giant's innovations, insists that up-and-coming product marketers attend Jobs' keynotes. Steve Jobs is the best at launching new products, she says. They have to see how he does it. How does he do it? The Business Week reporter provides the answer in the article. Steve Jobs puts in hours of grueling practice. When was the last time you could say that you devoted hours of grueling practice to prepare for a presentation? The honest answer is probably never. If you really want to talk the way Jobs does, plan on spending more time rehearsing every portion of your presentation. Glimpse behind the magic curtain. In an article published in The Guardian on January 5, 2006, former Apple employee Mike Evangelist wrote about his personal experience rehearsing a portion of a demonstration for a Jobs keynote. To a casual observer, these presentations appeared to be just a guy in a black shirt and blue jeans talking about some new technology products. But they are in fact an incredibly complex and sophisticated blend of sales pitch, product demonstration, and corporate cheerleading, with a dash of religious revival thrown in for good measure. They represent weeks of work, precise orchestration, and intense pressure for scores of people who collectively make up the man behind the curtain. According to Evangelist's first-person account, Jobs begins his presentation weeks in advance, reviewing products and technologies he is going to talk about. Evangelist had been tapped to demo the new iDVD, Apple's DVD burning software, for Macworld 2001. Evangelist said his team spent hundreds of hours preparing for a segment that lasted 5 minutes. That's not a typo. Hundreds of hours for a 5-minute demo. Evangelist said Jobs rehearsed for 2 full days before the presentation, asking for feedback from the product managers in the room. Jobs spends a lot of time on slides, personally writing and designing much of the content, along with some help from the design team. On the day before showtime, things get much more structured with at least 1 and sometimes 2 complete dress rehearsals. Throughout it all, Steve is extremely focused. While we were in that room, all his energy was directed at making this keynote the perfect embodiment of Apple's messages. In the weeks before the keynote, Evangelist saw the full range of Steve's emotions from disappointment to elation. I believe it is one of the most important aspects of Steve Jobs' impact on Apple. He has little or no patience for anything but excellence from himself or others, Evangelist concluded. In October 1999, Time magazine reporter Michael Krantz was interviewing Jobs one day before the introduction of a line of multicolored IMAX. Jobs was rehearsing the big moment when he would announce, "Say hello to the new IMAX." The computers were supposed to glide out from behind a dark curtain, but according to Kranz, Jobs was unhappy with the lighting. He wanted the lights to be brighter and to come up sooner. "Let's keep doing it till we get it right, okay?" said Jobs. The show's lighting folks practiced again and again as Jobs grew increasingly frustrated. Finally, Kranz reports, they get it right. The 5 impeccably lighted IMAX gleaming as they glide forward smoothly on the giant screen. "Oh, right there, that's great," yells, elated at the very notion of a universe capable of producing these insanely beautiful machines. "That's perfect," he bellows, his voice booming across the empty auditorium. "Whew, and you know what? He's right. The IMAX do look better when the lights come on earlier." The scene that Kranz described could be interpreted in one of two ways. Either Jobs is a micromanager, or as one of the Jobs' friends observed in the article, he is single-minded, almost manic in his pursuit of quality and excellence. What Steve Jobs, Michael Jordan, and Winston Churchill have in common? Psychology professor Dr. K. Anders Ericsson has studied top athletes such as Michael Jordan as well as superachievers in other walks of life, chess players, golfers, doctors, even dart throwers. Ericsson discovered that star performers refine their skills through deliberative practice. In other words, they do not just do the same thing over and over, hoping to get better. Instead, they set specific goals, ask for feedback, and continually strive to improve over the long run. From Ericsson's research, we have learned that star performers practice specific skills again and again over many, many years. Ordinary speakers become extraordinary because they practice. Winston Churchill was one of the foremost communicators of the 20th century. He was a master of persuasion, influence, and motivation. Churchill, too, deliberately practiced the skills required to inspire millions of British during the darkest days of World War II. He would prepare in the days before a big parliamentary speech, practicing quip or parries against any number of possible interjections. Churchill practiced so thoroughly that he seemed to be speaking extemporaneously. He held his audience spellbound, wrote Churchill's granddaughter Celia Sandys and co-author Jonathan Littman in We Shall Not Fail. The lesson is simple but requires lots of hard work. Practice is essential, particularly if you want to sound spontaneous. The world's greatest communicators have always known that spontaneity is the result of planned practice. You can speak the way Jobs does, but it takes practice. Jobs makes an elaborate presentation look easy because he puts in the time. In The Second Coming of Steve Jobs, Paul Weiss, a Next executive, was quoted as saying, "Every slide was written like a piece of poetry. We spent hours on what most people would consider low-level detail. Steve would labor over the presentation. We tried to orchestrate and choreograph everything and make it more alive than it really is. Making your presentation more alive takes practice. Once you accept the simple principle, your presentations will stand out in a sea of mediocrity." 10,000 hours to mastery. There are no naturals. Steve Jobs is an extraordinary presenter because he works at it. According to Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers, research suggests that once a musician has enough ability to get into a top music school, the things that distinguishes one performer from another is how hard he or she works. That's it. And what's more, the people at the very top don't work just harder or even much harder than everyone else. They work much, much harder. Although the observation Gladwell makes in Outliers applies specifically to musicians, The vast amount of research on the subject of peak performance shows that practice is the common thread among all individuals who excel at a particular task. Neuroscientist and musician Daniel Levitin believes that the magic number is 10,000. The emerging picture of such studies is that 10,000 hours of practice is required to achieve the level of mastery associated with being a world-class expert in anything. In study after study of composers, basketball players, fiction writers, ice skaters, concert pianists, chess players, master criminals, and what have you, this number comes up again and again. Of course, this doesn't address why some people don't seem to get anywhere when they practice, and why some people seem to get more out of their practice session than others, but no one has yet found a case in which true world-class expertise was accomplished in less time. It seems that it takes the brain this long to assimilate all that it needs to know to achieve true mastery. The 10,000 hours theory is consistent with what we know about how the brain learns according to Levitin and Gladwell. They say that learning requires consolidation in neural tissue. The more experience we have with a particular action, the stronger those connections become. Now let's do the math. 10,000 hours is equivalent to roughly 3 hours a day or 20 hours a week over a period of 10 years. To substantiate this theory, Gladwell tells the story of the Beatles, who performed together in Hamburg over a long period before they hit it big. According to Gladwell, before the Beatles enjoyed their first success in 1964, they had performed live together some 1,200 times, sometimes for 8 hours at a stretch. This is an extraordinary feat because most groups don't perform that often in their entire careers. The band members became better and more confident the longer they played together. Incidentally, writes Gladwell, the time that elapsed between their founding and their arguably greatest artistic achievements, St. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the Beatles' White Album, is 10 years. With the 10,000 hours theory in mind, let's turn our attention once again to jobs. Although Apple was founded in 1976, Jobs and friend co-founder Steve Wozniak started attending meeting of the Homebrew Computer Club in 1974. Homebrew was an early computer hobbyist club in Silicon Valley, California. It was at Homebrew that Jobs began tinkering and talking about how computers could change the world. Exactly 10 years later, Jobs gave an outstanding presentation to the introduction of the Macintosh in 1984. Most people who saw that presentation considered it to be a magnificent achievement, packed with suspense, drama, and excitement. But remarkably, Jobs continued to practice, refine, and improve his presentation style. A decade later, in 1997, Jobs had returned to Apple and was on stage at Boston's Macworld to discuss the steps he had taken to restore Apple to health. Everything about his performance that day was more polished and natural than it had been in previous years. He had lost the lectern, walking comfortably across the stage, and had started creating more visually engaging slides. Flash forward another 10 years to Macworld 2007, which in my opinion is Jobs' greatest presentation to date if you take into account every element of the keynote from the start to finish. He hits home runs in every presentation, but he hit a base-loaded homer in 2007. Everything clicked. Several sections of the presentation have been discussed throughout this book. The overall presentation was smooth and polished with dramatic highs and lows, confident body language, captivating verbal delivery, and gorgeous slides. The iPhone announcement had even overshadowed every product at the vastly larger Consumer Electronics Show held the same week in Las Vegas. The chief Misconception about Jobs is that he is a natural presenter, that he was born with the charisma that he exhibits on stage. Not true. As research has shown, nobody is a natural. You can achieve the same level of proficiency of the world's greatest communicators if you work at it much, much harder than everyone else. Flushing away $25,000. I once saw the executive of a major publicly traded company give a keynote presentation to a large audience of customers, press, and analysts. I later learned that the company had spent upwards of $25,000 for professional designers to create slick animated slides. That figure did not account for the lighting, audio, and venue. The most creative slides will fail to impress your audience unless you practice your delivery. This guy did not practice, and it showed. Since he hadn't practiced coordinating his words to the animation, the slides were off, and he lost his place numerous times. He stumbled through most of the presentation and at one point threw up his hands in exasperation. If you spend money and time on a presentation, and time is money, you owe it to yourself to practice, and practice some more. Make video your best friend. Nearly every year I am asked to work with CEOs who give major presentations at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. The conference is usually scheduled for the first full week in January, which means we're rehearsing over the holidays, often while the rest of the company's employees are off. Regardless, CEOs will show up for practice because they know how important it is. In one particular year, after several days of rehearsal, one of my CEO clients took the stage in Vegas but had trouble with the slides. The clicker had failed, and the slides were not advancing. Most amateur speakers who don't spend enough time practicing would have frozen, calling even more attention to the problem. Not this guy. He was so well prepared that he casually motioned to an assistant to advance the slides for him. We rehearsed contingency plan. He didn't miss a step and kept talking. It didn't end there. Something was wrong with the computer. It had locked and it would have to be rebooted for the slideshow to continue. The assistant simply shook his head, but the CEO stayed the course. He continued to deliver the rest of the presentation with no slides. He did so effortlessly and confidently. He later told me that without practice, which I had urged him to do, he would have lost his confidence and floundered in front of employees, analysts, investors, customers, and the media. When I asked employees after the presentation what they had thought, none of them realized that anything had gone wrong. Video training tips. We had used a video camera during rehearsals. Very few presenters watch themselves on camera, even though perfectly appropriate camcorders are available for less than $300. I know that watching yourself on TV, especially widescreen, is not the most pleasant experience, but take my word for it. It's essential. Record your presentation and play it back. If possible, find objective friends and colleagues who will offer honest feedback. Use an external clip-on microphone instead of the built-in microphone standard on all camcorders. Your voice will sound louder, clearer, and more resonant. As you watch the video, pay close attention to these 5 areas. Eye contact. Commit most of your presentation to memory to avoid reading from notes. Your slides should act as your cue. Public speaking expert Andrew Carnegie observed that notes destroy the intimacy between speaker and audience and make the speaker appear less powerful and confident. Notice that I didn't tell you to give the presentation completely without notes. Steve Jobs keeps notes out of his audience's sight. Only a careful observer would spot him glancing at them. He refers to notes during demonstrations, but since the audience's attention is on the demo itself, his notes do not detract from the presentation. The notes he does keep on stage are also unobtrusive and simple. He just needs to glance at them to find his place. Although it's easier in Keynote than PowerPoint to have a notes page for the speaker's view, you should still strive to deliver most of your presentation with no notes at all. Body language. Is your body language strong, confident, and commanding? Are your arms crossed or open? Are you keeping your hands in your pockets instead of keeping an open posture? Do you fidget, rock, or have other distraction habits? Are your gestures natural and purposeful or stiff and wooden? Remember that body language and verbal delivery account for the majority of the impression you leave on your listeners. Your body language should reflect the confidence of your words. Filler words. Are you constantly using and you know to fill the space between thoughts? Just as text shouldn't fill every inch of your slide, your words shouldn't fill every pause between sentences. Reviewing your performance is the best way to eliminate these often distracting fillers. Once you catch yourself a few times, you will be more aware of the habit next time. Awareness is more than 90% of the solution. Vocal delivery. Vary the volume and inflection of your voice to keep the attention of your audience riveted on your words. Raise and lower your volume at different points in your presentation. Change your cadence. Varying the speed at which you talk will keep your presentation from sounding monotone. Speed up at certain points and then slow down. Pause for impact. Again, nothing is as dramatic as a well-placed pause. Don't sound rushed. Let the presentation breathe. Energy. Do you look as if you rolled out of bed on a Sunday morning? Or do you appear vibrant, enthusiastic, and genuinely thrilled to be sharing your story with the audience? We all enjoy being around people with energy. They inspire us. They are stimulating, fun, and uplifting. An energetic person has passion in his voice, a bounce in his step, and a smile on his face. Energy makes a person likable, and likability is a key ingredient in persuasive communications. Many business professionals underestimate the energy level required to generate enthusiasm among their listeners. Electrifying speakers such as Jobs bring it. Jobs always has more energy than most other speakers who share the stage with him. Leave your comfort zone. Most business professionals could use an energy boost. But how do you project the right level of vigor without seeming over the top? By weighing yourself on an energy scale, and on the scale, more is better. I often ask clients, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being fast asleep, 10 being wildly pumped up, like motivational speaker Tony Robbins, tell me where you are right now. A 3, most of my clients reply. Okay, I say, what would it feel like to be a 7, 8, or 9? Give it a try. If they're being honest, most presenters place themselves at 3 to 6 on the energy scale. That means there is plenty of room to raise their energy level. Energy is hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. Television host Rachel Ray has it. President Barack Obama and Tony Robbins have it as well. These 3 individuals have different styles, but they speak with energy. Try this exercise. Practice leaving your comfort zone. Record several minutes of your presentation as you would normally deliver it. Play it back, preferably with someone else watching. Ask yourself and the observer, where am I on the energy scale? Now try it again. This time, break out of your comfort zone. Ham it up. Raise your voice. Use broad gestures. Put a big smile on your face. Get to a point where you would feel slightly awkward and uncomfortable if you actually delivered the presentation that way. Now watch it again. Odds are your energy will be just right. You see, most people underestimate how little energy they actually have during a presentation. When they are asked to go over the top and to leave their comfort zone, they hit the right note. 5 steps to rehearsing off-the-cuff remarks. With the economy plunging deeper into a recession, 2009 was a tough year to introduce a new car, but automobile companies can't put the brakes on design and plans set in motion years ago. In January, I spoke to a group of auto executives who were designated spokespeople for new car models arriving soon to showrooms in North America. They were looking for advice on how to answer tough questions from the media. The same day, U.S. Secretary of State designate Hillary Clinton was fielding questions from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the confirmation hearing. The Associated Press called her performance smooth, and NBC's Tom Brokaw said Clinton is known for her legendary preparation. I told the auto execs to prepare for tough questions in the same way that Clinton had probably prepared for her 5-hour appearance. It's a technique I call the bucket method, and it's used in one form or another by CEOs, politicians, and yes, Steve Jobs, who seems to have ready answers to any question. You can use it to prepare for presentations, pitches, sales calls, or any other situations in which you anticipate difficult or sensitive questions. First, identify the most common question likely to be raised. Clinton expected a question about her husband's international foundation and its list of donors. Critics had widely publicized the issue, saying her appointments would be a conflict of interest. She also knew that each of the world's hotspots at the time would be fair game: Gaza, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and others. For the car executive, the most common question would be along the lines, how do you expect to sell cars in this economy? Or will 2009 only get worse for the auto industry? Place the question Second, place the question into buckets or categories. There might be only one question in a bucket, as in the case of the Clinton's foundation, or there might be several, as in the case of the car market makers and the economy. The point is to reduce the numbers of questions for which you must prepare. It's uncanny, but in my experience training thousands of speakers, the majority of questions will fall into about 7 categories. 3. Create the best answers you have for the category, and this is critical. The answer must make sense regardless of how the question is phrased. You must avoid getting pulled into a detailed discussion based on the wording of the question. For example, here's Clinton's answer about her husband's fundraising efforts. I am very proud to be the president-elect's nominee for Secretary of State, and I am very proud of what my husband and the Clinton Foundation and the associated efforts he's undertaken have accomplished as well. She would have said exactly the same thing regardless of how pointed the question from Republican senators was. Listen carefully to the question. Number 4. Listen carefully to the question and identify a keyword, a trigger that will help you isolate the correct bucket from which to pull to your answer. 5. Look the person in the eye and respond with confidence. Well-prepared speakers do not memorize answers to hundreds of potential questions. Instead, they prepare answers to categories of questions. The way a question is phrased is secondary. Think about it this way. Your goal is to launch a mini presentation within a presentation. You can use the bucket methods to reframe the question in your favor. Let's assume that your company's product is more expensive than a similar offering by one of your competitors. Let's also assume that there is a good reason behind the higher price. The way the question is phrased is not as important as the answer you have created for the category, which is price. A conversation might sound like this. Customer, why are you charging 10% more for the same product that I can get from company X? You You're asking about price. He is charging more is the trigger for the answer that you prepared on price. Although the wording the customer chose is different from the term you chose, it triggers your prepared response on the subject. We believe your product is priced competitively, especially for a product that improves the bottom line for our clients by 30% on average. It's important to remember that we have the best service team in the industry. That means when you need support, you'll get it. Our team is available to you 24/7. None of our competitors can say that. I know the CEO of a large publicly traded company who uses this method very effectively. For example, during one tough meeting, an analyst asked him to respond to some unfavorable comments made by his largest competitor. Competition was his trigger word. This CEO smiled and confidently maintained the high road by saying, "Our view on competition is different from many others. Our view is that you play with class. We compete by giving our customers superior service and sharing our vision for where we see this industry going. As we get more successful, we see more competitors entering the market. It's part of the process of being a leader." With this one response, the CEO deflected his competitors' comments and reframed the issue to focus on his company's leadership. When former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger was asked how he handled media questions, he said, "What questions do you have for my answers?" He had his answers already prepared. The media is a tough audience, and these days so are your customers. Don't let uncomfortable questions throw you off your game. Best antidote to nerves. Relentless preparation is the single best way to overcome stage fright. Know what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, and how you're going to say it. Too many people focus inward during their presentation, creating even more anxiety for themselves. They'll ask themselves, "Is my shirt wrinkled? What is that person in the third row thinking?" In other words, it's all about you. Instead, go from me to we. Shift the focus to what your product or service means to the lives of your listeners and be confident in your presentation. Preparation. I have worked with several executives who are worth millions, in some cases billions of dollars. Guess what? They get nervous speaking in front of groups. Funny thing about nerves, though, the more you practice, the less nervous you will be. I know a world-famous business leader who gets very nervous before major presentations. He gets over it by preparing to the extreme. He knows the content on every slide and exactly what he's going to say. He arrives early to the venue so that he can test the audio and the projector and advance through his slides. This particular executive even knows where the lights are in the room, so he is never in shadow. That's preparation. He might get nervous, but his routine makes him feel much more confident, and he is considered one of the best speakers in corporate America. Golfer Vijay Singh hits thousands of balls a day to prepare for a tournament. Olympic gold medal winner Michael Phelps swims 50 miles a week to prepare for a competition, and Steve Jobs spends hours of grueling practice before a keynote presentation. Superstar performers in all fields leave nothing to chance. If you want to thrill any audience, steal a page from the Jobs playbook and start practicing. Caroline Kennedy's performance. Filler words such as and should not disqualify someone from public office, nor should they limit a person's effectiveness as a business leader. All too often, though, Fillers will diminish your influence in the eyes of others. In early 2009, Caroline Kennedy had expressed interest in the New York Senate seat vacated by Hillary Rodham Clinton, who became U.S. Secretary of State. The media skewered Kennedy's performance because of her verbal tendency to pack her remarks with like fillers. Kennedy said, more than 30 times in a 2-minute interview. Listening for her filler words became sport among bloggers and radio talk show hosts. She soon withdrew her name from consideration. Here are 3 ways to eliminate fillers from your remarks before they detract from your message. Ask for feedback. Most of your colleagues are afraid of offending you. When someone asks me for advice and I see some real areas for improvement, I will be tough. At the same time, as is true of most other people, I hesitate to offer unsolicited advice even when I'm dying to say something that can improve someone's presentation skills. Likewise, since most of your family, friends, and peers avoid critiques for fear of insulting you, they will not voluntarily tell you that your mannerisms are annoying. Perhaps if Kennedy had asked for honest feedback, someone may have said, Caroline, before you pitch yourself to the governor as the next New York senator, we need to work on how you answer the inevitable questions. Your answers must be specific, inspiring, and free from the filler words you use in everyday conversation. Tap the glass. I came across this technique entirely by chance, and it worked out extremely well. I was helping a woman rehearse a presentation and noticed that every other word was or It became very distracting, so I told her I would tap a water glass with a spoon every time she used a filler word. My tapping became frequent and irritating, prompting her to eliminate the fillers almost immediately. I've used it a few times since with equal success. Of course, this technique requires a second person to watch you and to tap the glass during your presentation rehearsal. Record yourself and play it back in the presence of others. If you are serious about improving your presentation skills, record yourself on a video and replay it with someone else in the room. You don't have to tape your entire presentation, just the first 5 minutes. That should give you all the information you need to make some adjustments. You might be floored to hear how many filler words you use. For most people, simply watching themselves on video is enough to overcome some issues. Video feedback is even more effective in the presence of others who can pick up on some verbal mannerisms you might overlook. A few ums and ahs from time to time will not detract from your ability to persuade an audience, but a steady stream of fillers can damage your efforts. The good news is that once you are made aware of the problem, you can easily follow the suggestions here to reduce or eliminate them. Director's notes. Practice, practice, and practice some more. Don't take anything for granted. Review every slide, every demo, and every key message. You should know exactly what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, and how you're going to say it. Record your presentation. Spend a couple of $100 on a camcorder and record yourself. If you don't need to record the entire presentation, the first 5 minutes should give you plenty of information. Look for distracting body language and verbal tics or fillers. When possible, review the video with someone else. Use the bucket methods to prepare for tough questions. You will find that most lines of questions will fall into one of 7 categories.